Welcome to Jackie's Craft Table. Hi, everyone. Thanks so much for joining me. I hope you're all having a wonderful day. In this video, I'm making 10 cards with MFT's latest card kit, and it's called Birds of a Feather. So I had family visiting, and this was sitting on my desk for a few days before I could actually pull it out and play with it. But let's see what's inside first. Here's the example page of all the pretty cards that other people have made with this kit. This is a piece of cherry wood adhesive-backed paper. Such a fun and pretty paper to play with. And then they always give you lots of gorgeous cardstock, and they give you 5 sheets of the smooth white cardstock. This next one is called Poppy and Pineapple. I love this dill pickle, it's so pretty. Blue Yonder, Cornflower, Periwinkle, Purple Rain, and Black Licorice. And now for the best part of this kit, all of these gorgeous dies. I was so excited when they announced this kit. And it comes with this cute birdhouse die. It has the cute faux stitching around the window. And then this set has flowers and birds and leaves and vines and it's just chock full of cute dies. It includes 4 birds and their little legs and their beaks and their eyes. This took me a while to snip apart, and I put them directly onto a magnetic sheet so I wouldn't lose any. That worked pretty well, but I am missing one of the beaks, so I did lose one die. Okay, I'm going to start out with this pretty cherry wood cardstock. I'm going to make a little birdhouse out of it. I cut it out once with the cherry wood paper and once with the pineapple paper. And I'm just going to mix and match them for this first card. I kept forgetting that they do have adhesive on the back of this cherry wood paper. So I often attach it with my own glue, but that works too. I like the little wood detail on this little birdhouse. And then I'm going to add some flowers to decorate it. It's a pretty good sized birdhouse. I like it. For the sentiments for all of these cards, I did have to look through my stash of what I had. For the most part, I'm going to use MFT sentiment stamps. You wouldn't even have to use sentiments if you didn't want to. You could just put together a set of note cards that don't have sentiments but just look pretty. For this card, I found a cute sentiment in my stash that says, "I love hanging out with you." So I'm going to have this birdhouse hanging from a piece of twine, as you'll see here in just a moment. I think that this orange and yellow and green look really charming together with this cherry wood cardstock. I used one of the dies to cut a little hole at the top of my birdhouse. This is where I'm going to put my string or my twine. I'm just going to use my craft pick to pop out that little circle. It did have to die cut through 2 sheets of cardstock, so I kind of pull it off. And here is my twine. This twine is great. It's pretty thin, so it goes through the melt easily. And it's from May Art, so it's just their natural twine. I have a big spool of it, and it's going to take me forever to get through. There's so much of it on that spool. I'm going to put my little bird together, and I'm just using my jewel picker to help me assemble this. This tool came in handy for this card video because I cannot, for the life of me, pick up all these little die cuts. My nails just are too short or something. I also cut out just the center of the birdhouse again, so I would have that black circle to go in the window or the door, whatever. And here is my sentiment. I'm going to stamp that at the bottom of my card. I end up stamping this a couple of times until it gets nice and dark. And now I can glue on my little birdhouse. This panel that I'm using is a little bit smaller than an A2 sized card. It's 5 1/4 by 4. Once my birdhouse is adhered, I'm going to pop in that little black circle. And I thought I'd add another little piece of the wood for the center of this flower. And then the bird looked the beak looked lost behind that black circle. So I'm going to change his beak. And I'm going to put a piece of the orange cardstock over his beak just to make that show up better. And once I have that adhered, you'll see a big difference. It really pops out from the card now. There it is. I'm just using some regular tape to tape the twine on the back side of this card, and I'm going to prop it up with some foam tape. I'm going to round the corners to soften it a little bit, and this is a 1/4 of an inch corner chomp. And then I can just add that right onto my card base. I'm using up some of the extra flowers that I had cut out for the inside of the card. I think that just looks cute and simple. That was a really fun card to put together. On card number 2, I pulled out my watercolors. I felt like painting a background for some of these die cuts. So I'm going to do the wet on wet technique, which is really fun. So I'm just wetting down this circle. I'm using some magenta and blue watercolors, and I'm just going to let that air dry. I do come in with more paints just to darken it. So fun to see the colors spread. And again, I just let that air dry. I just walked away and got some other things done while I was waiting. And then I'm going to die cut that with one of my faux stitch circle dies. This is going to be a wreath card. I saw so many beautiful examples with this card kit of wreaths. I thought I would give it a try too. To make most of these cards, I do use the paper that they included. You could certainly cut them out with white cardstock and paint or color them with whatever art medium you'd like. But I really liked the look of the colored cardstocks. I don't have these colors in my stash, so I thought they were fun to play with. I'm going to adhere my watercolored piece onto a piece of white cardstock that came in the kit. And now I can start building my wreath. I did stamp that first with the sentiment that says love and thanks. And then I'm just going to go around this circle, first with the little vine die cuts. And then I'll start adding my flowers and leaves. I'm using the cardstocks that matched and went really well with my watercolored piece. You could also pop these flowers up with some foam tape, but I just wanted to try it all adhered down flat onto the card. I think that flower that I'm putting down right there is my favorite because you can put cute little dot centers of whatever color you want onto it. I don't know, all the flowers are so cute in this die set. And then I cut down some of the leaves so I could just prop those behind everything. I didn't have a clear idea of what I wanted my wreath to look like, so I'm just playing around and gluing things in place. I'm going to adhere on this cute little blue bow. I used the same Gina K Connect glue, and I'm just holding that down until it adheres. And then I'm going to cut down the ends of the ribbon, and my bow kind of pops off, and so I have to glue it down again. And this time does the trick. It adheres on really well. I'm adhering this panel onto a piece of periwinkle cardstock card base. And that completes this card. It's very soft and subtle looking. I was really pleased with the way this one turned out. For card number 3, I was feeling kind of stamp deprived, so I pulled out some black fun foam, and I'm going to make my own stamps using these dies. This is a really fun technique. I already have some off to the side at the right, as you can see. They cut like a dream through this fun foam, just very easy, and I'm just popping them out with my craft pick. I'm going to use some Tombow liquid adhesive on the back side of these stamps. This glue is really fabulous for this technique because it dries tacky. So I'm going to add little dots on all of these stamps and let them dry, and then they'll just attach to my acrylic block very easily. And I can take them on and off the acrylic block as I need to. I'm going to use some poppy red ink. I'm going to make a pattern background with all of these stamps. And they just work like a dream, as you can see, nice and crisp impressions. I'm going to stamp this flower all over this panel. And then I can just put that stamp aside. And I'm going to stamp out the cute little vines next. I have one stuck to my hand there. That glue is very tacky. I pulled out a few inks from my stash that kind of matched the cardstocks that came in this kit. I really enjoy making pattern paper. You never know how it's going to turn out, and it's a really fun process. I'm going to put a piece of typing paper behind my card panel just to protect my work mat. I really liked the look of this particular leaf. I popped out the dots that were inside it. And this little stamp kind of had trouble staying on my acrylic block. I just didn't add enough glue. But I didn't want to add more and then wait for it to dry. I just wanted to carry on with the card. And I'm also using the little hearts, and they just stamp out so cute. And then I always like to use little dots. So the last thing I'm doing is putting little dots here and there. I cut down my panel to 5 1/4 by 4, and these are the leftover strips of paper. I always like to use those on the insides of my cards. I think that just frames out the interior of the card so cute. And then I'm just going to stamp just a little simple heart right there in the corner. I'm attaching my pattern paper that I created flat onto my card base. And I'm using a sentiment that came in last month's kit, and it just says thank you. And I'm going to cut that out with a faux stitched banner die. I am going to pop this up with some foam tape and just put that right across the panel. I'm going to add some clear confetti sequins just to add a little touch of sparkle to the card. I love the confetti sequins as opposed to the regular ones with the holes in the middle. I don't know why. They just look cuter, I think. And that completes this card. I wanted to create a pretty sky background for one of my birds on this next card. So I pulled out my cloud stencil from MFT. I'm using my blending tools, and I'm just using the leftover ink from them. I'm not adding any additional ink. They had a lot left over on the sponges. So I'm using a blue color and then a pink. And then I kind of blend the last one, the blue and the pink, to make a little soft purple cloud. I'm using my favorite frame die cut to frame out this card. And I'm just doing that in white, so it's very subtle. I'm gluing this frame flat onto this card panel because some of these flowers are going to overlap the frame. I think that just gives it a cute touch. And now I can glue on my vines and my flowers and leaves. I wanted to have a lighter green cardstock for some of these vines, so I pulled out my box of paper scraps and I just found this perfect green. I don't end up using all of the die cuts, but I save them for other cards. I just put them to the side for a while. Most of these I'm applying flat onto the card panel. However, my last little flower, I am going to put a square dot foam behind that to prop it up a bit. And I just love the yellow and the pinks and the greens together. I think it looks so cute. And there is the one I popped up with some foam. The sentiment I found in my stash, and I thought it was just perfect. It says, "You're such a tweetheart." I'm stamping that inside the frame, but at the bottom of my card. This sentiment comes from another MFT set that I bought a while ago. I think it's called Perfect Friends. It came with a bunch of cats and birds. It was really cute. And I am going to prop up my bird with some foam squares. I put a tiny little piece behind his tail. That's because I didn't want that to get ripped off or moved. I'm just going to put him on top of the little flower. And I'm using a piece of the blue cardstock from this kit for my card base. I'm using a bunch of leftover die cuts to put a few on the inside of this card. And I thought that turned out really cute. That's going to be a fun little touch for whoever I send this card to. Card number 5 is going to have a fall time theme to it. It says, "You are a blessing," and I just used a piece of the poppy cardstock to stamp that onto it. Sooner than we know it, it's going to be fall time again. And I thought these leaves would just make a perfect fall card. And I cut them out with the different colors of cardstocks from the kit. However, the green again is mine from my box of scraps. And I'm just applying them diagonally across this white piece of cardstock, trying to get them as straight as I can. I know they're not perfect, but I think it turns out pretty cute. And now I can just clean off the edges of the card with a pair of long, sharp scissors. I like to have my images continue off the edge of the card. It just looks more complete that way, and as if the pattern continues. It's more pleasing to the eye. I'm going to glue this onto a piece of the yellow cardstock that I used as my card base. And then I'm going to pull out my Wink of Stella glitter pen. And I'm going to apply a little bit of glitter on just some of these leaves. And this really adds a fun touch. I'm just being careful not to get it onto the white cardstock. I'll hold this up in the light and you'll be able to see the glitter there. It's so pretty. That's a simple but fun card to do. Card number 6 is one of my favorites. I just had fun putting some of these birds together in rainbow order. It does take time, so I'm speeding up the video really fast. Behind these birds, I'm using a little bit of squeezed lemonade distress oxide. It helps to distinguish them a little bit from the white cardstock. Squeezed lemonade is one of my favorite distress oxides. I think it's the one I use the most. Then I'm using a little bit of the cherry wood cardstock so that my birds have something to stand on. I debated putting grass under them, but I thought, oh, maybe this will look kind of like a tree branch sticking out. And now I'm going to start stacking my little birds. Looks so cute. I'm keeping them in rainbow order. So I have my red at the bottom, or my reddish orange. I'm putting a little dab of glue behind their feet, just so they stay stationary. I found a tiny little sentiment from my stash that says a happy hello. And I don't show that, but I do stamp that next to this blue bird. I just popped this whole card panel in my mini MISTI to stamp that out. After all this work, I didn't want to mess up the sentiment. I do end up cutting down this panel to 5 1/4 by 4, and I'm using the purple rain cardstock for my card base. I could pretty much use up all of the cardstock from this card kit. I just thought their selection was fabulous. And now on to card number 7. I'm using a rectangle die to trace a rectangle onto the front of this panel. And I did use the cardstock to cut out this hello die several times. This is just a quick and fun card. I'm adhering these word dies right in the middle of this rectangle. If you want a little more dimension, you could cut them out several times more and glue them on top of each other. But for the sake of time, I thought I would just do it once. These reverse tweezers come in handy here. I don't like to get the glue on my fingers, so I can just pick it up with the reverse tweezers and set it down where I like. And it keeps my hands out of the way so that I can see what I'm doing. I'm going to use the stamps I created from these dies to decorate the border of this card. I'm using inks that match my die cut hellos, and I'm just going around the border of this card with these 3 stamps. And they're not evenly paced, but I still think it looks cute. I would love to receive a fun, bright, happy card like this in the mail. As a finishing touch, I'm using more black dots. I was so surprised at how well these stamps turned out just using the dies. And then I'm using a piece of dill pickle cardstock for my card base. On the inside of my card, I'm going to put the word there. So my card is going to say, hello, 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 there. I love the way this one turned out. This card was more sentiment-driven because I found a sentiment in my stash that said, just sitting here thinking of you. I thought it would be really cute to have a bird peeking out of his little birdhouse. I'm using a piece of the black cardstock from this kit for my card panel. The birdhouse is made up of the cherry wood cardstock, and then I pulled some pink cardstocks from my stash. Going to cut off his tail so it doesn't show outside the house. And then before I adhere everything down, I'm going to heat emboss my sentiment at the top of this card panel with some white embossing powder. So I used my anti-static powder first, and then next I stamped it with my Versamark ink. It's a nice sticky ink. I always like to stamp it up twice. And then I can pour over my white embossing powder. Once that is melted, it does warp a little bit, but I'm going to glue this down flat onto my card base. So that takes care of the warping. And I'm going to glue my birdhouse down flat as well. And I put another piece of the cherry wood on the bottom of the house just to look like a pole that's holding up the birdhouse. Make sure you cut this cardstock off. The cherry wood just doesn't bend, it just cracks. So I tried that once. And so just cut off your excess. It's nice that it is a sticker. I'm gluing this card panel down onto a hot pink card base that matches the house. I used a lot of glue at the top just to glue down the warpage from the sentiment, and that completes this card. I did add a few more of the clear confetti sequins at the top. I got a lot of use out of the cherry wood cardstock, and I'm going to use it again on card number 9. I'm trying to make it look like a tree with a hole in it, and this is where my bird is going to have his nest. I propped up this cherry wood cardstock with some black fun foam just to give it a little bit of dimension. I want my bird to be a little bit recessed into this tree. I'm using the vine die to make his nest. I cut it out with some chocolate cardstock. I cut some of them down just to make them shorter. I'm just gluing that inside the little hole. Before I finish gluing down all of my pieces to his nest, I'm going to glue the bird in. I want it to appear as though he's sitting inside the nest. So this last vine is going to be glued over him. kind of hide him a little bit. Unfortunately, my camera stopped when I was stamping out the sentiment, but I just used another banner die and a flower die cut to finish that off. My last card is very simple, but I had a lot of fun creating it. So I found more sentiments from my stash. This old wood block says happy birthday, and I'm masking off the birthday because I just want the word happy at the top of this panel. This is more white cardstock that came from the kit. And I'm also using VersaFine Onyx black ink because when you can't stamp in your stamp positioner, this ink is a sure thing. It'll stamp dark for you. It's a great ink. I don't know why I don't use it more. It is kind of messy, but it's a great black ink. I'm using another stamp that says birthday, and I masked off the birth. I'm just going to stamp out the day. And you can see here that I only stamp it once, but it does turn out nice and crisp. For my bird, I'm using some foam tape behind him, and I'm just placing him right in the middle of this card. So it says Happy Bird Day. And I thought this would be a cute card for a child or even for an adult. I would love to receive a card like this. I'm using the last of my poppy red cardstock for the card base. On the inside of the card, I'm stamping out a little cupcake and a candle, and the sentiment says to you. So the whole thing will say Happy Birthday to you. And this is a smaller panel, and I'm just going to adhere it down flat onto my card base. To add a little more something to the card, I pulled out some enamel dots. I'm just going to put 3 of those onto my card panel. And that finishes this fast but fun little card. Thanks for watching, everyone. I sure hope you were inspired to sit down and create something awesome. I hope you all have a wonderful day. Bye.